Hi, I'm Naima. This video is about what to do when you have a long COVID health setback. One thing I've learnt this year is that recovery is long and it doesn't go in a straight line. There will be relapses, setbacks, and times where you simply don't have the energy to keep going. In my last video, I talked about 3 things that I felt were really helping me in my recovery. The first one was retraining my brain through therapy techniques. The second one was an array of vitamins and minerals that I've been taking that I think have been speeding up my recovery. And then I talked about time, which is probably the biggest healer of all. Because when I look at my recovery month to month, there were definitely improvements, even though there were good days and bad days. And sometimes it was difficult to see that I was slowly, very slowly, unfortunately, improving. And even though these 3 things have definitely really helped me in my recovery, I realized last week that it's really easy to stay positive on the good days, but it's when you have a setback or a relapse that it feels like you're right back at the beginning again. And I've been on this upward trajectory for a while now. For the last 2 months, I've been able to go for a few short walks a week. I've been able to sit up like this and not be in a lot of pain. And I've been able to enjoy life again, enjoy parts of life again. And it's something that I've really missed. But then last week when I had a setback, it felt so hopeless again. All the progress I've made just meant that when I felt like I deteriorated last week, it felt like I was right back to where I was last year. When I was scared, it felt like I'd never get better. In this video, I'm going to go back to some of the books that I've been reading since I've been unwell that have really helped me in my recovery. The problem is with these books is that I read them all in one go. I try to absorb as much as I can, but I've realized I now need to go back and look at the relapse and setback sections and see what I can learn so that the next setback, or hopefully there won't be one, won't be as devastating as the one last week. This might be a bit of a shorter video because obviously long COVID, who knows, but hopefully it will be helpful to some of you. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new here. I'll be posting content all about my recovery and things that are helping. As I always say in these videos, I'm not a doctor or a medical professional, so I can only speak from my own experience. And given that this is a new illness, there are no books yet on long COVID. So I'll be looking at books that focus on chronic pain and chronic fatigue syndrome. The first book I'll be looking at is called Manage Your Pain, and it's by Michael Nicholas. It uses a combination of approaches to minimize the impact of pain and put persistent pain where it belongs, in the background of your life. The second book I'll be looking at is Overcoming Chronic Fatigue by Mary F. Burgess. This is part of a study that researchers did at University College of London, where they were looking at chronic fatigue syndrome and developed a self-help guide that has proven success with chronic fatigue sufferers in breaking free of the vicious cycle of chronic fatigue. And the last one is The Way Out by Alan Gordon. He was in grad school when he started experiencing chronic pain, and after trying multiple treatments and going to see various doctors and looking for a cure himself, he grew really disillusioned with the treatments that were available, and he developed something called pain reprocessing therapy. This is a body-mind protocol that helps to eliminate chronic pain. Let's start with the definition of a setback. According to Nicholas, a setback is when things start to go wrong for more than a day or so, and daily activities are significantly disrupted. And according to Burgess, it's when there's an increase in pain for more than a day or 2, so quite similar definitions. There are quite a few triggers: getting an infection or another illness, experiencing a major life event, so this could be moving house, this could be divorce, this could be a bereavement, stressful conditions, so deadlines at work or anything like that, and ceasing to use coping techniques. And interestingly, I think all 4 kind of apply to me, so there's really no surprise that I had a setback last week. One of the first things that all of these books mention is the importance of prioritization. When you're experiencing an increase in symptoms, thinking about what you can move around, what you can spread out throughout the week. What are the non-negotiables? So for me, it's showering, making food, potentially care responsibilities for others, potentially work, and what can be left. So maybe socializing can be left, or maybe going to the cinema or some of the things that you have planned can be left for that week or moved along. And one of the things that's really difficult is when you're prioritizing the things that you need to do, keeping time for meaningful or pleasurable activities. So when I was most resentful of this illness was when I was only doing housework and work, and I felt like I wasn't achieving anything, or like my life had meaning and I was only existing. All of the books mention identifying unhelpful thought patterns, and this is so much easier said than done. The books all reference finding more helpful ways to think about the situation, identifying negative thoughts and trying to be realistic. They make a few comments like thinking the worst never helps. And it's really hard to not think the worst, because even if, on day 1 of your setback, you can stay positive, by day 3 or 5, it's enormously frustrating. And for me, I've had enough. I can stay positive and reaffirm feelings of safety and have positive thoughts on day 1. But as the setback progresses, this becomes more and more difficult to navigate. There were a few examples of positive thought patterns. So things like, I know I can't make my pain go away completely, but I can cope with it. Another example is, I've coped with this pain before, I can do it again. Or even when it gets really bad, I know it won't stay like that. And then they reference as well sending messages of safety. It's going to be all right, you're safe, I'm safe. I'm in shock right now, but when I overcome this, I'll be okay. I almost feel like I need to write these down in a journal and say these to myself, or write them on the wall or something, just so that I can remember to have these more positive thought patterns. They also reference things to avoid. So one of the ones that really resonated with me was carrying on thinking, I'll rest once this is done, and this is something I'm really guilty of. Holding myself to old standards of what I used to be able to do and thinking, just another hour and it'll be fine, and then before I know it, it's 3 hours and I've completely thrown all of my pacing techniques out the window. A lot of the books also reference stopping everything and staying in bed as something not to do for more than 1 day or so at a time, so allowing your body time to recuperate, and then the next day trying to at least get up for part of the day. It's such a difficult balance, because on the one hand you want to be resting to recover, but on the other, if you stay in bed for days or weeks at a time, then your body is used to no longer doing any activity, and then that becomes a difficult cycle to get out of. So this is definitely something that I really struggled with at the beginning. The books also talk a lot about reflecting on the setback and trying to understand why it happened. Setbacks will likely happen when you have a chronic condition, unfortunately, or when you're dealing with chronic pain. And the best thing to do is to have a plan in place for when that does happen. And I think this is really difficult, because for me, as soon as I've had a setback, I want to almost forget about it and pretend it's never going to happen again, that it was all some horrible nightmare, and that I won't have to go through that pain or that exhaustion again. And this is very difficult for me to acknowledge even 1 year in, because it means having to come to terms with the fact that this illness, this condition, will be longer term than I would like. But the books all suggest to almost allow for a recalibration after you get through the setback or the relapse, and ask yourself the following questions. Have I been overdoing something? Could there be a cause for why this setback happened? Review what may have led up to the setback. Potentially keep an activity or a sleep diary. I did try this. I tried to do an activity diary, and the difficult thing at the time when I did it, this was the worst part of my illness about 6 months ago. And the diary would go a little something like this. Stay in bed, watch TV. Move to living room, lie down on sofa, watch YouTube videos. Go back to bed, watch more TV. And it was just day after day of me moving different parts of the house basically and doing the exact same thing, which was completely just trying to rest as much as possible. And it was just a little bit too confronting for me at the time, looking back over that journal. And that's it for today. Please let me know in the comments if you're someone who has long COVID or who has a chronic condition, what kinds of tips that you have for managing setbacks, because I think it's something that is very difficult to navigate. And the more resources we can share for each other, the better. And if you have any books as well that you think have been particularly helpful, or if you've read any of the books that I mentioned and you have a take, then please share. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video, and I will see you in my next one.